Hey guys, yesterday when we were multiplying fractions using visual models, the last question on your worksheet was describe any patterns or anything that you noticed while we were multiplying those visual models. And you probably recognized that if you multiplied straight across the numerator and straight across the denominator, you got that product without having to draw the models. Here's the thing, fifth grade, we talked about this before, is all about models in your North Carolina curriculum. So you need to be able to do both by the end of the year, which is recognize visual models and be able to construct those visual models and solve using an algorithm. Algorithm is what we're talking about today. You'll likely see these within word problems. So let's get started there. Let me get rid of that. Okay, Alejandro and Prisha are practicing their soccer skills. Alejandro kicks his ball 4/5 of the length of the field. Prisha kicks her ball 3/4 of the distance that Alejandro kicks his ball. How far down the soccer field does Prisha kick her ball? Well, often in fifth grade, we end up trying to rush to add these two numbers together. So we have to ask ourselves, what's happening in the situation? So to figure out what's happening in this, we're going to reread the problem, slowing it down just a little bit and trying to make sense of it. Sometimes when we read all of these numbers and all of these names in the situation, it gets a little confusing. So let's listen again. Alejandro and Prisha are practicing soccer skills. This is not important information to solve. I'm going to use my pen to get rid of that information so it doesn't get tricky later. Alejandro kicks his soccer ball 4/5 of the length of the field. So if I'm looking at this image here, I can imagine 4 out of 5. Wow, that is almost all the way down the field. Prisha kicks her ball 3/4 of the distance that Alejandro kicks his ball. So we're not talking about the entire distance of the field. Prisha only kicked, I don't want to say only, like she didn't kick it far, but she kicked hers 3/4 of the different distance that Alejandro kicked his. So if I put this into a model here, I could see that it's not quite as far. So it says, how far down the soccer field does Prisha kick her ball? Well, we're not talking about 3/4 of the entire distance. We're talking about 3/4 of 4/5. So 3/4 of 4/5 is how we're going to determine what operation we're using to solve this. Now, because we're trying to solve for a fraction or a piece of a piece, if you watched that lesson yesterday, we learned that a fraction of a fraction, or that word of, usually indicates multiplication. Okay, so I'm going to change my pen color here and we're going to work on some solving. Let's go to white. All right, so the first thing I can do is change that word of, how I set up my problem. And you probably noticed yesterday that if, like we said, if you multiply straight across the numerator, straight across the denominator, you're going to get your product. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 4 times 5 is 20. I'm going to pause your video really quick and draw this model. Okay, I am back. Today's lesson is not on drawing the model, so I wanted to pause that so you didn't have to sit through it. Okay, but we know that when we draw the model, I drew 5 rows by 4 columns, shaded 4 out of the 5 rows, and then went back in and shaded 3 out of 4 columns. My product, we learned from yesterday's lesson, my product is where both of those shading colors overlap. So that would give me my numerator. So if I counted these boxes, we have 1, 2, 3 by 1, 2, 3, 4. So 3 by 4 would be 12 out of 5 rows, 4 columns, so 12 out of 20. That's how we got that, that product there. Now the last step would be to Simplify this answer. So to put it into simplest terms, now usually I teach both strategies, GCF and the easy strategy of simplifying by dividing by 2, 3, 5, and 7. This seems to be the strategy that everybody's chosen this year, so this is the one we're kind of sticking with. It just takes, it's a few more steps than we're used to. So let's look at the number 2 to simplify. 12 divided by 2 is 6, and 20 divided by 2 is 10. Okay, so it's reduced or it is simplified, but it's not in lowest terms. So let's see if we can divide by 2 again. Remember, we do this until we can't divide anymore. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Okay, so these are both odd numbers. I know we're not going to be able to divide by 2 again. Oh, but maybe 3. Let's see, 3 divided by 3 is 1, but 5 cannot be divided by 3. And then 5 and 7 are both bigger than one of the numbers in our fraction. So that means the answer here in simplest form is 3/5. So let's see if our answer makes sense. It says, how far down the soccer field does Prisha kick her ball? Well, we knew that Alejandro kicked his ball 4/5 of the whole field. And now we know that Prisha kicked hers 3/5 of the field. Okay, let's check out the next one before you practice some on your own. Now, after soccer practice, Prisha and Alejandro are hungry. Prisha eats 6/8 of a granola bar. Alejandro eats 2/3 as much as Prisha eats. So, new key words for solving. We learned when we're trying to solve for of, we multiply, but also when we're trying to solve for as much as. So this says Prisha eats 6/8 of a granola bar, but Alejandro eats 2/3 as much as. How much of a whole granola bar does Alejandro eat? Write an equation to model the problem, then solve. We just did that. So standard algorithm says of multiplying fractions says that we can multiply straight across the numerator. 6 times 2 is 12. And straight across the denominator. 8 times 3 is 24. Now, last step, we're going to need to put this into simplest form or lowest terms. Again, we can use that strategy to divide by 2, 3, 5, or 7 until we cannot divide anymore. So let's start with 2 again. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 24 divided by 2 is 12. Okay, let's try it again. Remember, until we can't divide anymore, 6 divided by 2 is 3, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. Okay, so now let's look and see if we can divide any further to get it into lowest terms. 3 divided by, can't divide 3 by 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3, but it still doesn't work because we couldn't divide the numerator by 2. Let's try 3. 3 divided by 3, okay, I can divide that one, is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Now that we have 1 as one of our numbers of the fraction here, we know it's in simplest form. We can't divide any further. So, how much of a whole granola bar does Alejandro eat? Alejandro eats 1/2 of the granola bar.